everybody, and welcome to this special postseason hoops edition of Titan Table Talk. We're going to be talking to both men's basketball and women's basketball today, and sitting down first with us is head women's basketball coach at Illinois Wesleyan University, Maya Smith. Maya, welcome.
Thanks, Tony. Glad to be here.
Stumbling over my words. I'm so excited about getting into this postseason now. Are you excited as well to kind of take that next step?
Yeah, it seems like a long time ago when we played that very first game.
Well, you finished off this past week. You had 2 away games. You needed to finish up business in the conference to kind of win the conference outright, which you did. First game was Wednesday at North Central on the 19th of February. 79-55 was the final score, but that was a game. You've had a couple of unbelievable quarters this year, maybe the first, second, third, or fourth. But in this one, it was maybe one of your best first quarters of the season.
The fourth quarter against North Central was really good. Fourth quarter against Millikin at home on Senior Day, really good. So you got to love those types of starts. I mean, scoring 30 points in a quarter is pretty impressive.
And then you finished up on the weekend. You were on the road again in Rock Island against Augustana, and I'm going to guess maybe not the performance that you really wanted. A little bit of a tough shooting day, but still one that the team kind of gritted through and pulled out the victory there.
Yeah, I was really proud of the way we handled some situations at Augustana. It was a little bit of an uncomfortable game. It was a little bit physical, a little bit chippy. Again, their senior night, so you tend to, when you're playing teams on their senior night, you tend to get their best effort, their best game. So I was really proud of the way the girls handled that. We got the win, got out without any injuries, and that was the goal.
So overall record for the regular season finishes up at a remarkable 24-1 with the lone loss at Carthage, and that was also in the conference, obviously. So 13-1 in the conference. Heading into CCIW as the number 1 host, you get to host the CCIW tournament this weekend. So there'll be 2 semifinals on Friday, and then the championship game on Saturday. I think it was interesting because we talked to a couple of players earlier in the year, and they talked about during the off season what a motivating factor the CCIW tournament championship loss to Carroll was, and then the second round loss to Wartburg, a team that eventually went on to the Final Four, and the girls kind of looking at that and saying, that could have easily been us if we had kind of won that Wartburg game. I'm guessing as a coach it's tricky because you don't want a team thinking about the end of the season when they got a whole regular season to play. Is it nice now finally to be getting back to those things, though, that were big motivators for the team? Do you sense you've got a team kind of wanting to correct those disappointments from last year? Now it's exciting that we're finally here.
I would say yes. I hope they're looking at everything one game at a time, not looking ahead. But, I think you used the phrase human nature, just to look ahead at things when we spoke last. And I think that as the girls are planning for their senior year, as they're planning for their junior year, as they're planning for any season, they look ahead at postseason play. And certainly, tournament time is a great time. It's so, just full of enthusiasm. It's lots of fan support, more than a normal regular game, I guess I'd say. And then also, just the postseason play, the NCAA postseason play those are all things that you do think about. I think about them too. You try not to get carried away with your thoughts on those types of games. But now that the CCIW tournament is here, it's time for us to really find a high gear, let it all rip out and go.
Well, and obviously, I always say I find the sports psychology as interesting as I find the game sometimes. But your opening semifinal is going to be against Millikin University, a team that you beat down in Decatur by about 20 here at home on senior night. Again, you mentioned you guys had this phenomenal quarter where you just kind of blew the doors off and settled the game early. So I get that, concern from you as a coach wanting to take things still one game at a time, because it would be easy for a team to look and say, oh, we handled this team twice, and now we just got to kind of go through the motions there so that we can play in the championship game against the winner of the Carroll North Central game, I think it is now. So, our Carroll Wheaton? Is it Carroll Wheaton? Carroll Wheaton. So, is that kind of a concern? As a coach, I know you've had kind of these last couple of years where you've had these back and forths with different teams, but when you kind of go through the conference season, you've handled the team pretty easily twice, but now you've got, and it's their season on the line. Millikin's only chance, for example, of getting to the NCAA tournament is winning this conference tournament, so they're going to be a motivated side.
I think the biggest difference, Tony, is, and I hope my girls understand this, is that, teams like Millikin, they have a new coach, so they're building their progress throughout the course of the year, and they're able to make bigger jumps. And I thought last night watching them versus Carthage, they had made a big jump. They looked a lot better against Carthage than they did against us at home. But then again, at the same time, I hope that provides some confidence for my team that, hey, we've taken care of business with them 2 times already, and we've done so very convincingly. Let's go out and do it a 3rd time. And so that's the approach that we're taking with the girls this week.
How do you as a coach approach that? And I'm sure at different times you've been on different sides of it, but I sometimes feel it's more challenging for the coach of the team that has won because the other coach is thinking about how can we change? How can we throw something at, and this is in a variety of different sports, how can we do something different that they haven't seen yet that's going to make them uncomfortable? And you don't always know how to prepare for what they're going to do. They've obviously got to make a change to try to turn around the result. Your approach is kind of like, well, let's try to go out and do the same thing we did last time that led to success. So it's a little difficult regardless of which position you're in.
Yeah, it is. And I always tell the girls, if the toaster is still working, even though it might not be working really great, don't fix it. So we try to use that approach with the girls. Also, I think, too, that, again, because we are so one game at a time, and I'm proud of the team for looking at it from that aspect. The one game at a time really helps us to prepare for what's going on. But I tell you, in preparing for Millikin, maybe not knowing what they're going to do, could they throw something crazy at us? We watch so much film. I mean, games and games and games of film that we feel like we typically have, with the help of Synergy, the new program that we're using. That really helps us prepare for the unknown a little bit more than what people would expect, I think. So most of the time, I feel like we have an idea of what to expect and typically can put that game plan in progress.
I realize these things are tied together, but are you more excited that you've won the conference outright, or is it being able to play these tournament games at home at the Shirk Center?
Ooh, toss up. Of course, probably winning the conference outright, but always playing in the Shirk. You know how good a feeling that is. And we've got some things planned for the weekend. We're handing out some free T-shirts. We know our student body is going to come out and support us. They were instrumental in that game against Carroll. I mean, they were our 6th man. They helped us fight back with 6 players on the floor. So we're really looking forward to that atmosphere. So both are really good, but, I'm from the School of Bridges, where win your conference. Take care of that business first.
Well, and we had an interesting situation last year as the first team in the CCIW, where both the men and the women qualified to host the tournament. This year, the men will be on the road. They'll be up in Carthage for the men's tournament up there. And that's always a difficult decision for a lot of Titan fans, because you have fans that really love supporting both teams, and some will be drawn to head up there to support the men. And it's kind of nice when it was all here together because everybody could kind of cross over, but still expecting a good crowd. And I know a lot of people in the community are excited to kind of get to Shirk to see these postseason matchups.
Yeah, and actually it's a great thing to know that both of our teams are so supported. I'll just say this, gas is kind of expensive right now. It's a 3-hour drive up to Carthage, so maybe you want to save a little bit of money and stay home. But no, we want our guys to do well. I have an excellent relationship with Ron Rose, a working relationship, and it just our girls love their guys, and their guys love our girls, and it's really when they talk about special seasons, the whole part of basketball, men and women, is really special at Wesleyan this year.
As you look at the games moving forward now, are you still at this point saying, everyone always can get better. There's always room for improvement. Do you look at anything specifically with this team and say, if we're going to try to make a long run, if we're going to try to win this conference tournament, maybe make a long run in the NCAA, we've just simply got to get better in this area? Or after 25 games, is it kind of like, we just kind of need to, the best things that we've done this year, we just need to do more of that more consistently?
I like doing more of what we do well. I like that philosophy a lot. We are throwing in some new things. We put in a new baseline out-of-bounds play on Monday. We put in 2 new quick hitters where we feel like if we have to have a bucket from Ava Bardick, this is what we're going to run. If we have to have a bucket from Lauren Huber, this is what we're going to run. So, and again, working with such an incredible staff, it's really the amount of work that Coach Brian Erisman and Coach Kate Bowman are putting into the preparations for our games is amazing, and I think it just really helps us, gives us a great advantage.
I always wonder this, probably when I watch the NFL season more than anything, about like I think about with the Kansas City Chiefs sometimes, because they'll kind of go through the regular season and sometimes not look so great. And I always wonder, are they holding back some of their offense for when they're going to need it, right? They don't want to put too much, like you said, everybody's watching film. So you don't want to put too much on film because you want to have something in your back pocket. I don't know if basketball, if it works that way, where there's consciously things that you kind of hold off on using in the season because you don't really need to, because you want to be able then to kind of throw that wrinkle then at the end of the year.
That's 100% yes. And sometimes it's funny because, we might be in a huddle or one of the point guards will come over and say, Coach, can we run such and such? And I'm like, no, don't show it, So we have some wrinkles, just like you said, and I think the biggest thing for us is being able to adapt our run and jump. And so, is that a wrinkle or is that an adaptation? We think it's more of an adaptation. We feel like we're really confident there. But just, the other day we ran a drill where we call it 7 up and down. And it's a hard drill to achieve, 10-minute drill. And the basic part of it is the other team starts with 7 points. And you cannot score if you don't stop them. So you have to stop score in order to move your score closer to their 7. And we couldn't get it done. And the reason why we couldn't get it done is because we weren't doing it in the full court. We weren't allowing them to run and jump. It was half-court defense. So we know we need to get a little bit better at half-court defense. But it was such a great point to prove to our team how valuable our run and jump is and how we have to be willing. And I always tell the girls, the run and jump, it's difficult. If it were easy, everybody in the country would be doing it. You're one of the few teams that does it.
Yeah. And I know it's always nice. I mean, you've got 2 more conference games and conference foes to go against at a minimum. And sometimes down the road, we've had years where you've run into one in the NCAA tournament. But it's also nice to get into the postseason and after a grueling conference season and play somebody outside your conference again after you've spent all these weeks playing these teams that know you really well.
Hey, it's never boring beating somebody in the conference again. So we're looking forward to that. And again, some of the things we're doing with the girls, we say we have written our first novel, the regular season. We've written it. It's pretty good. It has a blip on it. But other than that, the outcome is pretty good. So now we're into the sequel part of our book. So we're excited about being where we're at.
Well, best of luck with that sequel. I know there's a lot of people interested in seeing it, and thanks for stopping by to spend some more time with us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Tony.
We'll be back with men's basketball on Titan Table Talk right after this.
They say inside every challenge is an opportunity. At Illinois Wesleyan, you have the power to seize that opportunity. Discover the tools, the mentors, and the experiences to take on any challenge and shape not just who you are, but who you will become. The best college in Illinois for jobs is right here. Tap or click now to start your free application and break through at Illinois Wesleyan University.
Welcome back to Titan Table Talk, this special postseason hoops edition, and we've got men's basketball coach at Illinois Wesleyan University, Ron Rose, joining us. Ron, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Tony.
Yeah. Well, we're going to go in the way back. I mean, it's not way back. It was February 15th, but we're going to go back a little bit and talk about your senior day victory against Millikin, maybe one of the start to finish best performances. I mean, senior day is always special for a lot of different reasons, but it's usually a big crowd. There's lots of energy, and it seemed like your team really fed on that and put on quite a performance.
Yeah, I'll start the show by just thanking all the Titan supporters out there. We had an amazing year at home this year. I think we played really well, and a big part of it was the support that we received, and a great example of that was senior day. Big crowd, lots of emotion, 6 seniors, and certainly came out focused and played good basketball.
You followed that up with a home victory against North Park. Final was 87-81, but for a minute there, did you think the final was going to be about 160 to 150?
Well, one of the goals this year was to open things up offensively, and we ended up leading the league in scoring this season. The disappointing part, and this is how coaching it works, right? You're happy about one thing, you're always picking something where you got to get better, is we hang our hat on the defensive end. For us to be good, and as we head into the postseason, we have to keep our defensive identity. So we need to shore that up, but certainly offensively, it was an up and down baskall game.
Yeah, I think the halftime score might have been 50-46, and so as I was walking out of the arena, I looked at a couple people and said, well, the good news is we scored 50. And everybody knew what the second half of that statement was.
Well, former coach yourself, you know how that works. Yeah. Well, and North Park does that. They press, They play a fast tempo. So you want to, when you're being pressed, you want to attack that press to score.
Right.
And so it did lead to a up and down, fast-paced game.
And then finished off, you talked about the positive energy that you get from senior day at your place. Unfortunately, that means you usually end up somewhere. You hope you don't get 2 senior days at the end of the season.
Yeah.
And you had one at Augustana, and they were fired up. And it was, I think it's safe to say, a chippy contest between the 2 teams, but a tough loss on the road at the end of the season.
Yeah, they had senior day. They have, I believe, 8 4th and 5th year guys. So
wow.
they were very, big crowd, lots of emotion, and they played a great basketball game. I remember talking to one of the Augie people, and it's like, at home you beat us by, I don't know what it was, 20-something. What was the difference? I said, well, we played really well when we were at home, and they played really well today.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as that, but certainly we were disappointed in our performance, and now we turn around and are going to face Augustana again this coming weekend.
Yeah, I was curious to ask you about that. I said something to assistant coach Andy Etheridge back in the office when I was just looking at who had won their games and advanced and everything. And I think team psychology is always interesting. Sometimes having a chance at redemption when you've been disappointed with your performance can be a pretty motivating thing. And it's going to be on a neutral court this time. Carthage College winning the conference. They'll be hosting the CCIW tournament, and so the first semifinal is going to be your squad against the Augustana Vikings. So, good or bad? Do you like the fact that you're getting Augie again?
Well, more important than who you play is how you play.
Right.
And so our focus has to be, we were playing terrific basketball in January, didn't play as well in February. And we need to get back to playing. So I'm more concerned on how we perform as opposed to who we're playing. We know whenever you go into the CCIW tournament, you have the top 4 teams playing in a tournament. It's going to be an NCAA caliber event, and you got to play good basketball.
This is just in my rudimentary understanding of the game of basketball. So correct
Are
me.
you sure you want to dip your toe in this, Tony?
Correct me if I'm wrong here. And it may be an oversimplification, and maybe it's true for any basketball team. But I think specifically your team. I think a lot of teams and players today focus so much on the offensive side of things and shooting. And it's not that offense isn't important. But when your team is defending well, really well, with high intensity and rebounding hard, it seems like the offense looks better as well. And even if the offense isn't there, you're still probably in good shape. So, but the team's overall function looks overall better when the defensive intensity and the rebounding is there.
No doubt. And a big part of that's the energy level. Defense is all about effort. And you can make up for defensive mistakes by just giving great effort. And so that translates when you're defending and you're playing hard. Offensively, we've got talented guys. I don't worry about our offense. We've got guys that know how to play and put the ball in the basket. But I think how this team performs and how we do in the postseason is going to be based on how we defend and rebound.
Yeah, the North Park game as an example, sometimes is there a tendency that when things are coming so easily on the offensive end that you tend to just kind of let up on the defensive end?
I think it's 2 things. One, you're right. I think when it comes easy offensively, you lose that defensive focus because you're so. And then the other thing is when you're not scoring on offense, I think human nature, you let down on defense because it's that basketball's a game of momentum.
Yeah.
When it's going good, you've got energy, you've got enthusiasm, and so defensive stops leads to good offense. And it's counterintuitive, but when you're not scoring, you actually have to play with more effort, energy, and enthusiasm on the defensive end, and that's what will recreate the momentum toward your team.
I know you mentioned the last game against Augustana that they had a lot of energy and fed off their home crowd and played pretty well. But you, of course, go through film and you look at your team. Was there a smoking gun? Was there anything that you looked at? Was it a combination of things that were just not going well? How did the team kind of look at that performance and say, this is not typically the way that we'd want to play?
Well, Augustana played well. They're playing with a lot, as you mentioned, energy. They out-rebounded us. They were plus 10 in the first half. You go -10, and that's our thing. I mean, we led the league in rebounding. When you take away a big part of your game and the other team kind of dominates you in that area, you put yourself in a vulnerable position, which we did. And I will say this, we were down, I don't know what, 16 or 18 midway through, and we fought our way back to being down 6 at half.
Right.
We got it down, I believe it was 2 or 3 points with the ball. So I don't question our guys' heart, the effort, but we have to execute much better if we want a different outcome on Friday.
Rebounding is interesting because I think at the base level, you think about boxing out, or, leading, which of course is important. But in today's game, with a lot of three-pointers being thrown up there, sometimes it's that secondary level of rebounding, right? It's boxing out at the perimeter level, it's chasing down loose, because you're not getting balls right off the backboard that your big boys can go and get. So did you look at the rebounding performance, and was it an all-around lack of focus, or was it more of just kind of rebounding after three-point misses?
Well, there's two parts to it. There's offensive rebounding and defensive rebounding.
Right.
And a strength of ours has been offensive rebounding. You're getting 2 for 1. You're getting 2 opportunities at the basket if you get the offensive rebound. And we didn't go to the boards like we needed to. And on the defensive end, they did. Where I think there is positioning is a big part of rebounding. But as you mentioned, I thought they won the 50-50 battle more times than not. The balls that didn't come down into the paint, they were chasing them down. And so, I think that's going to have a major impact on the outcome on Friday.
I talked to Maya about this a little bit, going in against a team where her team has defeated Millikin pretty comfortably twice. But I said, sometimes it's easier. Now you're coming into the conference tournament. There's a lot on the line for teams that are, a team like Augustana, the only way they're getting into the NCAA tournament is by winning this conference tournament. And they always like to beat Illinois Wesleyan, of course, if they can. But sometimes being the coach that has to make some kind of change and throw something new into the mix in order to compete, it's a little bit harder as the coach who's had the 2 dominant wins, right? Because you kind of look at it and you're like, well, I don't know what they're going to do. They're obviously going to change something up to try to. This is kind of interesting because you guys split the regular season and so forth. You're into postseason now. I also asked the question about, to what degree do you hold some things back and then try to throw some new wrinkles out there that might cause a problem? Where are you with that and trying to adjust? I know coaches always say we got to do what we do best.
Yes.
And make sure you do that. But in game planning for the opponent, is there much of a change?
Well, you're not going to trick them at this stage.
Yeah.
And you're not going to change. We've been doing this since October.
Right.
That's a long time. And so I think every coach makes adjustment here or an adjustment there. Oftentimes it's the losing team because what you did the first time wasn't effective. But in the end, you are who you are, and it comes down to, at this point, if we haven't identified what makes us a good team, you're in trouble.
Right.
So even though there are adjustments made, it does come down to trying to be true to yourself and playing good basketball.
I don't want to talk about officiating specifically, but I am curious with your team. Like you've had games this year. You've got a big physical team, and when I say physical, I typically mean in size. Typically, you've had the size advantage. You mentioned leading the conference in rebounding. How games are officiated, though, kind of affect that sometimes. Sometimes the fact that the visual test is like, oh my gosh, look at the size of these Illinois Wesleyan guys, they're pretty big, and how maybe they're called and officiated in games that are physical versus how much is allowed to go against your players because they're big guys.
I feel like this is a setup, Tony.
Well, it's not. I feel like it's maybe been a level of frustration for you.
Here's what I'd say. Officiating is really hard.
Yeah.
And
in today's game, I mean, it's just...
big, strong athletes, I think, are especially difficult to officiate because we are big and strong and physical. And so I really respect the job officials do. I would never want to do it. I try to show that respect during the game. And it's a hard job. It is a very hard job. I do think there can be a tendency, and I think you see it a lot in high school when you have the big guy that isn't allowed the same latitude at times. I think that's human nature as well. But I think the big focus for us is not worrying about exterior things, whether it's the officiating, the crowd, whatever it is. It's easy, I think, as an athlete to lose that concentration on what we need to do because of other things. And so that's one of the goals here this weekend, is that we're just going to focus on playing Titan basketball and doing what we need to do to be successful.
Well, and I think consistency, I was amazed. I was for the Holiday Classic tournament. I think the championship game was between Peoria and maybe Romeoville. Both teams had some really phenomenal players, some D1 kids on it. I was sitting down underneath one of the baskets in the Shirk Center, and I'm telling you, when a rebound came off underneath the basket, you better be strong and be ready to take some hacks, stuff that I think back in the day would have easily been caught. But the reason I bring that up is what was amazing was that I never saw a player complain. The physicality that was allowed to go on during the game. And I don't think it was a bad game or people were over the line.
Yeah.
But just the style of the game today. A coach never complained about, hey, yelling for fouls. The players never said. It was like, you're either strong enough to bring that ball down and have guys, hacking at you and get the ball out quickly and get down the other. The fans weren't complaining.
Yeah.
Both of those teams in particular. Now, sometimes you get teams from different areas, and one's used to playing one way and being officiated one way and it's another. But for those two teams, I was just like, okay, they both say this is how the game is supposed to be played. That's how it's being officiated, and everybody's cool with it.
Well, basketball today is a much more physical game than it was 20, 30 years ago. And the CCIW men's basketball is the Big Ten of Division III. It's a physical style basketball. And so you're right. At this stage, we have played, and because we are big and strong, I think teams know they have to be physical to compete. And so our guys have adjusted this. Funny story, you'll remember this, All-American player for us, Jordan Zimmer.
Yeah.
Great player. Well, teams did everything they could to try to prevent him from catching the ball in the scoring area because he was such a great shooter. And
right.
So they're bumping and holding and every strategy you could think of. Well, he's in my office one day, and a student comes by and hands me this will tell you how long it was a VCR tape
yeah.
of when I played. And I hadn't seen that since I played.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, Zim, I got to pop this in. So I pop it in, and we're watching the game. And it was a high-level game. And he says, if you know Jordan, the most humble, wonderful guy you'd ever, soft-spoken. But he looks at me and goes, Coach, if I would have played in that area, I would have scored 40 a game because there was no contact.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you put two hands on someone, you chuck someone going through the lane, it was a foul.
Yeah.
And the game has evolved to being much more physical. But I thought that was really funny, and as I watched it, I didn't realize the difference in how basketball is played today. And we didn't lift, so
right.
You looked at the players on the floor. We were different physically.
Yeah, the goal, I told someone this the other day, but I remember growing up and playing, and even as a defender, the goal was to avoid making contact with the offensive player so that you didn't get called for a foul. And to now, everything's about putting a shoulder into somebody.
Yeah.
I watched you teaching one day where I think you were having players go over the top of the screen, and you actually said you need to get into the ball handler physically and make contact with them when you come over the top so that it kind of blows that play up a little bit.
Yeah, you got to hit the ball handler before the screener hits you.
That's exactly what you said. And
no
I'm
doubt.
like, that is so odd because you're coaching to contact now because it's allowed within the parameters of the game.
Yeah, if you don't, you're at a disadvantage.
Right, yeah. Well, yeah, thank God you and I didn't have to play during those.
We're not the two most physical guys, no doubt.
We would have never gotten on the floor. So, well, hey, best of luck this weekend. I know, like I said, it's been an up and down. I enjoyed hearing what you said to your team, which I agree 110% with. Your team is capable of dropping a game to just about any team, but you are also, the good news is you're good enough to beat about any team when you're on your day. And we talked about this with Maya as well. All you're looking for right now is about 4 weeks of just your best basketball as consistently as possible for as many minutes per game.
Yeah, and it's really interesting as you look at the 4 teams playing in Kenosha, all upper class dominated teams. And so whether you're looking at our squad or Augustana squad, North Central, Carthage, it's all a bunch of guys that are playing as hard as they can because they know the days are numbered.
Right.
And so when that happens, there is a heightened level of focus, no doubt.
Well, good luck. Thanks for spending some time with us today. And I guess back to the video session and practice.
No doubt. Always fun being here. Thank you guys for everything you've done for us this season.
Thanks, Ron. Well, that's going to be it for this week's edition of the Titan Table Talk. We thank Ron Rose for joining us from the men's basketball program, also Maya Smith from the women's basketball program. And we hope to see you at the games as well as next time on Titan Table Talk.